this episode of Gearhead's Garage, we are counting down the days to the Hot Rod Power Tour 2024. We've got our 1923 Speedway Motors T-Bucket that we don't really have much time, and we got a lot of stuff to do before the Hot Rod Power Tour begins. So let's do a rundown. So I've got a love-hate relationship with this legendary Speedway kit here. Not too sure what makes it legendary. Now, we drove all the way from Florida to Nebraska to pick this bad boy up, and well, I did it because I thought maybe we could save some money on shipping. So if you're thinking about driving up to go get it, depending on how far you are, it might be cheaper to actually just ship this sucker. So Speedway offers a few different variations on how you can actually set this thing up. We went with the Small Block Chevy 350. We'll call it our Facebook donor that we don't even know if it runs yet. HEI distributor up top. Well, very questionable transmission. Now, you can go the Ford or Chevy route, and they'll weld in your cradles for you if you want. Well, sometimes they'll weld them in. You just gotta make sure you actually get them welded in. And for the rear, we're doing a 31-350 for the rear, so that'll give us a nice highway speed. So we're about 120 some days out from the Hot Rod Power Tour. Now, when we started this Speedway Motors T-Bucket, our goal was not actually to finish it and do the Hot Rod Power Tour. The goal was to build it as cheap as possible, going exactly by the assembly manual, making absolutely no modifications whatsoever. Now, we steered away from that, and now considering that we have about 120 days until we need to take this, well, no suspension, all motor, fiberglass, metal seat car, 2,500 miles, we need to start getting at it. So there are a few ways that you can do this if you're thinking about building a T-Bucket, and you can learn from these videos. So we started with the actual manual here, and I think we ended probably back in the brake section. So yeah, we started making a lot more modifications than what it called for. But again, it was build it as cheap as possible using just the supplied parts with no modifications. Now, when I do build the next one, we're gonna have to change some things up. So let's get to some assembly here. So we originally had a Rochester Jet 2G thingy-majigger thing up here. I don't remember actually which one it was. And well, found out the accelerator pump on it. It's actually floating around here somewhere on the floor. I think I just threw it out instead of keeping it. And we could not get this motor started at all. It would turn over here and there. We did get it set for top dead center, all that fun stuff. And then the electrical, we had some issues with that. So being that this is the original OEM intake from General Motors, I was gonna change it out to a 4-barrel, but that kind of defeats the purpose of building our cheap kit using the parts that we have. So I picked up a Holley. Now I did think about actually rebuilding the Rochester carburetor, and I figured, nah, technology's too old, no point, right? Which they still have parts out there, but it's not worth it, especially with the accelerator pump being broken. So we picked up a Holley 500, nothing special, 2-barrel here. So problem with going to an original GM intake manifold and going to a Holley because of the bolt patterns, you gotta use one of those sketchy adapters. Now that sketchy adapter is this little doohickey right here, which kind of requires you to actually file down the holes and well, make room. And there's not too much thread here. So if we did it again and we weren't going the, let's just say the El Cheapo route, then we would make the change on the intake manifold. Now later on down the road, we'll make some changes to this thing and actually probably switch over. I do have a Performa on the shelf up top, and I'm not going to do any red here because I would like to in the future get these out. And I don't want to use a heat gun. So there's not really too much thread here when putting one of these on. You got to be really, really careful. These can actually really bite through, and you end up actually pulling right through the aluminum here. It's a terrible design. There's definitely a different way that they could machine these, but really in hindsight, you just need to change out the intake manifold. So let's see if this thing goes on. I have to say, doing the motor, the carburetor, for this particular build here was probably the most frustrating out of all of them. And then look at that, the bolts that they supplied us, for the adapter bracket are too short. Never worry though. I think we can make this work here. Ooh. Too bad Tractor Supply is not open and I don't have the ability to 3D print metal. That is the same size right there. Well, dang. I don't think I have the right size. Well, after cannibalizing the neighbor's car, I was able to find some longer bolts here and get this little situation taken care of. Now we're getting, man, now we're getting somewhere. This carburetor project has been going on for weeks now, and only because of weeks of just trying to figure out that it was actually the accelerator pump. It took a long time to figure that out. So let's take a look. Does everything work? Make sure nothing binds. Probably should have done all that before, well, we actually did the check. So, choke works out there. Nothing binds over here. Looking good. All right, man. Yeah, we should probably just put that back on for now. Now for the most important part here. We're gonna use our same setup from when we had the Rochester, but we're gonna have just a little bit of extra line to work with. Unfortunately, we did a push-on style, and once it's pushed onto the barb, it ain't coming off. So we may trim it down depending on how everything sits. I always like to have a little bit of extra line just in case. That way you have room for error if you ever need to actually trim anything. Nothing like a little bit of overkill here for your wrench. All right, we're set. So you can see here on what we got going on here. So we're still gonna get an air cleaner for the top. I haven't figured out what style we're going with, and we're just running everything back over here. Now we still do have on the water pump, still haven't done any type of bypass at all. So I was explaining in one of the other episodes here that tried to remove those and they're not coming out. So I don't want to break anything. So we got the hoses, we got the bungs on order actually. So we're just going to cut these short and cap them. Same thing over here, and just cap them for what they are. And hopefully it doesn't spray hot water in our face there. Now, last week when I did try to start it, no leaks on any of the freeze plugs, nowhere else on the motor, except for where the temp gauge goes in. So I got that all taken care of, and boy, did the water coming out of this thing smell worse than a water treatment plant. A quick little tidbit too, I was thinking on the carburetor, and well, some of y'all may be going fuel injection, carburetor, all that fun stuff. So this particular Holley here, it might be different for the edible crotch and all that fun stuff. Does not pass really any inspections, and well, it's only approved for 1965 and 67 and older. So if you're in one of those states that has, you know, questionable overreach, carburetor might not be the way to go for your T-bucket, or well, anything else really. So last week I ended up painting the body, and we're going with a Speedway Motors body, again, on a Speedway Motors frame. One of the issues I actually ran into with this thing was the body doesn't fit over the Turbo 350 that we're using. And the reason for that is there's a tab that's molded right into the bell housing of the Turbo 350 that actually needs to be cut off. So that was a bit concerning to me, that you have to hack away at the transmission because it's not clearing the body. Now, the unchanneled body, which is the Speedway body that actually sits right on the frame, that'll clear the transmission just fine. It's the channeled body. So depending on your preference on trans here, there's the brackets here. So you got passenger side, then you got driver side there. Driver side actually doesn't hit the body. Passenger side one, I think, was actually the one that hit the body. I got to go look underneath the body, but I'm going to use a Dremel to cut this off with a fine disc, because knowing my luck, if I use like an angle grinder cutoff, it's going to some Wile E. Coyote kind of stuff, and the transmission's just going to kind of fall out, or you know, the torque converter to shoot out of the top there. But I'm thinking it's a manufacturing defect in the fiberglass laying. So it's time to bust out the fake knockoff Line-X here. And we went around and, well, sanded the brim of the T-bucket. I'm going to spray the inside. Man, it hurt actually sanding that stuff down after we just painted it all nice and pretty. Then we're going to do the edge down here. That's all prep. So we'll give it a little bit of, what do you call it? Some rock protection there. So let's see how this stuff sprays.
All right, guys, so we're back with the mask again. Yeah, fumes are absolutely crazy, but I wanted to give you a little bit mid-update here. This stuff is actually laying down a lot better than I was expecting. Look at that. This is awesome. So you can probably hear the floor. The floor is like super sticky because this stuff is going everywhere. But this is about coat and a half, maybe 2 coats. I'm going to do one more. Surprisingly, we're actually going to end up using all the bottles. You only get about maybe 20 seconds out of a bottle of consistent spraying. And then on the side here, you can see as well. Take a look at that.
All right, guys, so here's a moment of truth. It's been cured now for about 30 minutes. Still got some wet spots in here. You can see how it's starting to actually kind of work its way that way. So yeah, we used the full 6 bottles. Wasn't planning on it, but I got most of the plastic off. And now, this is where I'm a little scared. So let's check this out. And hopefully, we didn't screw up no lines. Oh yeah, look at that, man. That turned out really, really well. But, still need to pull a few more pieces of tape. There's another one that cuts across there. And there's another one down here. So that's gonna be our make or break. Surprisingly, the Raptor liner actually matches the paint. It's kind of shiny still a little bit, but when it dries, it's actually not too bad when you look at what paint we actually used on the body there. So, whew, man, that was a pucker factor spraying that stuff. Look at our kick panels here, and ooh, look at that. You know, when you use real 3M trim tape versus like the El Cheapo China stuff, it actually comes out really well. Really good for painting, but damn. Almost to the end, come on. No tight spots, no sticky spots. About as far as we can go. We're gonna have to cut that off up there. Take a peek. And we got our top part here that we did. Ooh, look at those lines. Yeah, I'm really surprised at the way that actually matches. Well, there you go. Now I pulled the old switcheroo here and I ended up going a little further down in the trunk. So we got ourselves a nice, almost like a two-toned. Look at that. Got a little bit of bumpiness. We got our flat black and we got our top bezel there. Haha. Man, this is looking good. So the fun part's out of the way. All the painting's done, the interior's been sprayed, exterior's done at this point. So no gauges installed or any of that, but we need to start working on, well, our Pontiac taillights. So we cut our holes for the T-bucket a couple episodes back, drilled some holes, and we're using a 47 through 55, 57, who knows, Pontiac style blue dot rear tail light. So we're skirting the law a little bit. I was explaining in Florida. Florida has a weird little addendum. You can actually have the blue on the tail lights depending on the age of the vehicle. Now because the actual T-bucket is going to be 1923 within the documents, we're able to get away with actually using this here. But unfortunately, with the design of this, it doesn't actually sit flush with the fiberglass. So I took one apart so you could actually see the interior. It's pretty simple on how this works. 1157 bulb and socket. The issue is when you push this up to the bucket itself, these bezels actually run in and they hit, and it doesn't actually sit perfectly level. So I want to give a shout out to Mr. Duck Hunter 43, one of our subscribers on the channel. So he actually designed the file for this using something that I already had set up. So we're using black style resin for this here, and then we're going to get this sucker going if we can actually find the file there. So that's actually what we're going to print. So we're going to go ahead and get that started. Now we're going to do a resin version, which is like an epoxy style resin, and then we're going to cure it in the vat. Now in the meantime, I want to do an ABS style one here, and we'll use this one as our test fitter. We're going to see which one actually works. So we're going to print that using just black ABS plastic there, and this one should actually go a little quicker than this one here. This one requires a lot of curing time with this and the liquid. This one just shoots it out of the little barb there. Now, if you're getting into doing hot rod 3D printing and you're kind of, you know, exploring the avenue of 3D printing parts for your car, I will tell you, the actual 3D printing itself is one hell of a learning curve. You go from this to this, it's like going from, well, it's just hard to explain. There is a significant difference between these two. While this actually uses UV light to actually cure the resin, there's no heat involved whatsoever. This one here is going to end up heating the bed up to about 250 degrees Celsius there, and then the extruder end ends up being about, I think, about 400 degrees or so. So essentially it's just melting plastic onto a heated bed. This one takes a little time to warm up, but once it gets going, it starts moving here. You can see this one here, we're already at 2%. It's going to start changing on our time, but I guarantee this ends up being about a 2-hour print versus this one being probably about 30 minutes. So here you can see our initial layers getting laid down here. So this will actually set the base, but you can see kind of the pattern that we're going for, which matches the actual design itself on the CAD file. And our resin one here has made absolutely no progress. So still got some time with that. So in the meantime, we got plenty of things that we can knock out here. So those tabs that we were talking about, we're gonna go ahead and cut those off using the Dremel. I think what we're gonna end up doing is we're just gonna cut off both sides since we're at it, just in case here. And I think we got our, well, where's that Dremel at? Oh, man. When you pull out your Dremel and you realize you have no more cutting discs, we'll find out. So it's all cut off here. We'll get it cleaned up so way it's not so sharp and it's a death trip hazard or nobody loses a limb right there. I'd hate to put my hands up and, you know, lose 4 of my fingers or something. So I also noticed too with the grounding strap when I was cutting it, didn't notice before, this got pinched when the body went on, and the way it was sitting on this tab that was sticking out, it caught that there. So that was just put there as a, let's just say, an insurance policy. But we'll go ahead and replace that just in case. That way these two are kind of ground, even though they're technically grounded, but the block was painted in the back. And then we got bolts, but hey, you can never have too many grounds. Now, you noticed here, we do actually have a good block ground of 1/0 here, and yeah, it's red, it's all we had left. So that's running all the way to the back here, and I did put it, you know, it's all labeled and whatnot, so we don't, you know, reverse polarities and blow the motor up or some crazy stuff like that. So get that cleaned up, but we gotta check on our printer because I think the FDM one is done, and then we'll check on the other one. So dealing with these resin printers gets kind of messy. The clear is not as bad as all the other colors, but you can see it actually needs to be cured, but you can see the quality difference between the actual FDM style printers. And what we're doing is we're actually washing this in 80% alcohol. So it's just gonna get the extra resin off. And then what we can do here, looks like it might be actually time to change the alcohol. Let that run here for a little bit, and then we'll check on it here shortly. So we ran it for a second cycle. This should be good for now. We'll get this thing pulled up and check how we are. And now we can just kind of scrape this off. So once we get this cleaned, you can actually see how smooth the quality on this. It's like a medical grade. It's an 8K, so the actual quality of it compared to like an OEM one is going to be exactly the same. So in my right hand here, I actually have the original one. Now this one's rubber, but you can look at the design here of the one we 3D printed, and if you didn't really look at the texture of the material that it's made of, you can see that they're almost exactly identical here. So we need to actually cure this. Otherwise, if it's not cured, it's actually really brittle and it flexes. So it'll easily snap. Now, compared to the one that we're doing on the FDM printer over here, it's a little bit of a different quality, like I was saying, but this is right off the batch. As soon as you print with the 3D printer on the FDM, you can use that immediately. These ones have to actually go through the process. So we'll clean it again and then we'll cure it. So we got about a minute left. I just did a flip on this as well. So funny thing is, when you look at the buttons on this sucker, they're in Chinese, and then right underneath it is English. I wonder where it was built. But you can already start to see just a little bit through the UV, the color is actually changing more to a matte instead of a gloss look there. So the resin one just finished curing, and you can actually see how smooth and how detailed that part is. Now if you look over here at the FDM one again, you can see the honeycomb structure that's on the inside. So what it does is it prints a flat layer base that's about 3 mil thick, and then what it does is it ends up filling it in. So technically the FDM printers are hollow. You can do a solid. Now the resin ones are completely solid, there's no internal structure, no nothing. What you see is what you get. But we're still gonna compare the two when that one comes off a little later, and we'll see what we'll use on the back of the T-bucket for the Pontiac taillights. All right, so our FDM one is actually done, and you can see it's still stuck on the print bed there, and then we have our SLA one there, so you kind of see the quality difference between the two. Now the FDM one prints on a type of Bourgeois glass, and the only thing that really holds it down is, well, sticky, I don't know, what do you call it, the little stick of glue thing. So getting this off can be just a little bit tricky, and you want to make sure you don't break it. Sometimes it sticks on just a little harder. So again, you have SLA, which is, I'm telling you, medical grade or good automotive grade, and then you have SLA, and you can see the two side by side. Your SLA has a little bit of cat whiskers, which can be cleaned off. Now, these were perfectly measured exactly with a caliper. I don't remember the actual measurements, but I guarantee you the SLA one compared to the resin FDM one is gonna fit much better. So our tail light that we're using, our little Pontiac tail lights, came with a rubberized, essentially a mounting ring, mounting adapter. But I wanted these because I needed a bit of a different thickness, as well as the way that the mounting bolts would sit when it holds these threaded rods in as like a jam nut. It kind of created a bevel, and it would wobble when it was mounted. So let's see, this should slip right on. This is the FDM one, and not quite. Now if we take our SLA one, the SLA one should fit right on without any modifications. So yeah, you can see that. But what do you guys think? There's the SLA one. There's the profile from the side there. So it'll look just like that from the back. And then there's the side as well. Or let's slap on the FDM one, and we'll take a peek at that. If it fits, well, hold on. There we go. So that's FDM on that, if you can even tell the difference between the two. I would say SLA probably looks less cheap. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thinking SLA, but maybe FDM, as well as there's a little bit of a different color between the two and a contrast. Remember, one's gonna be a little weaker tensile strength than the other. So we got the bucket all spun around here. We got a pretty nasty storm going on. It's temperature dropped from about 85 down to about 55 really, really quick. But let's talk about the bucket really quick. We'll do a little tour of all the curing in the daylight so you guys can actually see. Now you probably notice a little bit of damage right down low. Now that's besides the damage towards the front that, well, we took care of. But this one here, this was from the brake line. Now, their own bucket does not fit cleanly on their body. Now you remember I said that we were following the manual and all that stuff, and we stopped at the brake line section? We ended up doing the through fitting, the bulkhead fitting here, and I didn't like the idea of it, but again, the goal is to build their kit their way, and definitely some little design flaws. What should have happened, it should have gone down around this member here, and then come along this rail, and then back in and do some type of other type of fitting besides that. That one just sticks out way, way too far. So, well, it's actually the size they gave us. You could have probably done a smaller one there, but yeah, we'll get it all fixed up. So it took a nice little gash out of there. So if you are gonna do the Speedway bucket, plan on making some serious modifications to this thing on their frame. Now, as for the Spirit frames, Spirit bodies, I'm not too sure, but definitely had to take some chunks out of the side here. And that was so it would actually clear the coilovers right there. as well as some other little modifications in the channel. Now, I'm finding that the channeled body has a lot more issues than the unchanneled one from what I hear. The unchanneled one, as you know, sits right on top of the frame. So you don't have any of this channeling going on here or kind of inside of the body. It's definitely a different fit. So no biggie, we'll get that one spot repaired like we did to the front, but taillights. So remember we drilled these out, I don't remember, what was it? Episode 7, one of the two here. So we'll get them fitted in with our little 3D printed mounts there. A nice little cut. We're not quite ready for the electrical, which that'll be coming up, but we can go ahead and get some hard mounted stuff in. Speaking of nothing fitting, you guys do remember this, right? The actual trunk lid. Well, this was the trunk lid that we picked up from Speedway, you know, the one that actually had the logo, well, the serial number embossed actually into the fiberglass mold. This one didn't even fit the rear part of their trunk, which actually had to end up being shaved down. So we ended up reordering it like twice, and when we got it back, well, when we got the second one back, the second one over here looked like a 5-year-old had actually trimmed it. It was all squiggly, squaggly, and whatever. It was bad. So I get it, it was unfinished fiberglass, but definitely was not pretty at all. A couple of days ago, I ended up doing kind of some test fitting on this, and I realized we needed to actually 3D print some penny washers. So we have these that we're going to use, and with our other backing plate, should make this process a lot easier. So I was afraid that the bolts were actually going to pull through on the fiberglass. So when I put the nuts through, I wanted to make sure that I had at least some type of equal distribution on the backing plate. Got her in finally. Jesus, that is one tight fit there. Then we got our little washer here, and now I'm actually getting some T-bucket vibes. So that should help kind of distribute everything there. Get that put in, but gotta make sure we don't over torque it. We can still pull it through the fiberglass, so it's still got to be gentle, but just enough that you don't shake the heck out of it with this super almighty powerful 50-year-old Chevy motor. So still got a little bit of wobble to it. All right, so let's see if number 2 goes a little easier than the first one, because the first one did not go well. Well, that fell right in. These are really working out well here. Get a nice little crank down, not too tight. Yeah, I really want to power these up, but you know, then again, got to make sure you guys come back for episode 13 to actually see them work. Don't forget, guys, all the videos are filmed in 5.3K, so if you got one of them fancy TVs or phones, I'm shooting in some pretty high quality stuff. Don't forget, we got a new Facebook page up as well. I'll put all that in the description if you want to go ahead and hit that. I post all my updates over there as well, so that's looking pretty tight. Let's check the rear end. Now, she is looking like a T-bucket. Well, T-bucket with some nice Pontiac vibes. That looks pretty damn good. We are making some progress. Really curious to what they look like once we get an 1157 in there with a nice little LED. I'm not a big fan of the incandescent, especially since we're running the nice LEDs up front. I think they're tri-LEDs. Let's take a look. Don't actually remember. They're for Harley, same size as a Harley Street Glide, Road Glide. So I think they're like a 6-inch or 7. I totally forgot what they are, but man, that is looking good. And here's a nice little shot of the washers in the back end, so you can kind of see what we got going on in there. So there really isn't too much, well, not too much meat, and I was afraid it was going to pull through. So that's why we got those little 3D printed penny washers in there, because the Pontiac taillights only came with that little bolt. Now I understand with the Pontiac, they did have a recessed little installation bracket that sat in, and it was all metal and stuff. So these weren't originally designed to go on a T-bucket. I mean, the fiberglass is thick, but knowing my luck, man, I will pull those right through that. So we'll see longevity-wise how long these washers actually last. These are the resin ones, not the FDM ones. So If they do end up breaking or cracking under the extreme vibration and stress, then we'll end up replacing them later on. But man, I'm loving that. So guys, we got a lot more we got to do on the T-bucket. Still got to do transmission cooling lines, get everything mounted, make sure the motor, you know, actually works. So hit the like, subscribe, turn that notification bell all the way up so you get all those notifications from the channel. Check out the Facebook page. It's the new one. I got the link in the description. See you next time.